one more ancestor. The most famous of all the ancestors, Lucy. What are we going to do? Lucy was so special. She didn't just get her picture on Google. She got an animated GIF. So this is big time. What are we going to do? And there's plenty of pictures of Lucy. I mean, Carl, there you go. That's an evolutionary ancestor right there.
Well, Lucy was an important find for not only science, but our own evolutionary history. Lucy was the first of our ancestors to show evidence of bipedalism. And she also showed that bipedalism developed before our brains got bigger. Carl Kerby from Reasons for Hope is going to try to dismantle this massive paleontological find, and I think I'm going to need some help for this.
Hello!
Thanks, Skeptic, for helping me out today. Everybody should go and check out the Skeptic's channel and subscribe to him if you like today's video. But if y'all want to fuck around and find out how Carl Kerby debunks the Lucy fossil, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. So, if y'all don't know the Skeptic here on YouTube, I'll let him tell y'all a bit about himself.
Thanks, Godless Engineer. I'm a British circle that moved to Bible Belt America. To get out my atheism, I watch videos on YouTube that make strange claims and then explain why I can't accept their position.
Glad to have you here, Skeptic. Now let's see what Carl has for us today.
Looking like a human, looking like an ape. I mean, from the neck up, that is one ugly woman. I'm just being honest with you, okay? From the neck down, looking mighty human, except for when she had a bad hair day, it was all over her body, and that's not a good thing for a lady. I'm just saying.
That's not a good thing for a lady? What the heck? I feel bad for any partners he's had. But even so, regardless of judging someone for how they look, who's to say it's not a good thing? Hair keeps creatures warm, so from a beneficial trait standpoint, it actually is a good thing.
You know, an apologist video wouldn't be complete without explicit misogyny rearing its little head. I don't think that Carl understands that Australopithecus afarensis is not a Homo sapien. God damn it, Carl! This does not bode well for the rest of his video.
What are we going to do, Carl? That's an evolutionary ancestor if I ever saw one. What's the actual evidence? Let's go take a look at it. Here's what they have. Now, there's two important points I want to make about Lucy. Number one, Lucy wasn't even a she. Lucy was a he. Yeah, her bones, they figured out after 40 years of study that Lucy wasn't a she. Two Swiss scientists figured out that she was a he. And those Swiss scientists suggested a new name. They suggested Lucifer.
So, this did happen. Two scientists did try to suggest that the Lucy fossil was actually of a male Australopithecus afarensis. That study was later refuted by Taug and Lovejoy when they independently corroborated the initial assessment that the Lucy fossil was genetically female.
I can only imagine the name Lucifer terrified the creationists more. Thank goodness they refuted that. Discovering Lucifer would quite possibly have blown their minds. But even if it was a male skeleton, which we've now confirmed it wasn't, that doesn't change the fact that there was a really old part skeleton of an Australopithecus afarensis found.
Now, I did say amen to that because this is a set of bones that's been used more by Satan to light us than any other set of bones going. And
I'm not even sure what that would mean. It's funny how, when creationists can't explain something, they make up the most absurd things to make some sense of it.
Can you imagine Satan in his little lava-filled cave, and he's just like, I'll use mostly decayed fossils in order to deceive the intelligent ones. This is literally the claim that Satan hid fossils in the earth in order to deceive people about evolution. I simply cannot take these people seriously. Last week, Carl made the claim that evolution is only popular because somebody made a pact with the devil and sold their soul.
Point number two, she's 40% complete. Remember the quotes that we read? They're only fragments. There's so little information to study. Very true, but not Lucy. Oh boy, we have 40%. Not true. There are 206 bones in the adult ape and human body. If you start counting the bones up here, feel free, you're not going to find 40%. The vast majority of bones in the human body and ape body are in the hands and in the feet. And if you look carefully, you're going to see that they didn't find any hand or foot bones for the specimen Lucy.
Well, Carl is basing his claim on the idea that Lucy is a modern ape. She isn't, and the 40% isn't about how many complete bones we have. Obviously, we only have partials of several bones. The 40% is referencing the total skeletal structure and not the amount of individual bones that we have. Regardless of how they came to that number, we do have multiple different fossils of Australopithecus afarensis with which to compare to Lucy's fossil. But still, I don't see how any of this is relevant to debunking Lucy as our evolutionary ancestor.
Yeah, right. He seems very focused on that one skeleton. Maybe some of the new Australopithecus fossils found were called Lucifer. He's going to have to write a presentation for each fossil at this rate, stating what's not right with every single find. That'll be a yawn fest.
Now, this is an important point. Please stick with me. Lucy is an individual within a family. I am an individual within the human family. Lucy, they found her bones, and her bones did not contain any hand or foot bones. But they did find hand and foot bones from her supposed relatives. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So 40% complete, that's not true.
Just saying it's not true doesn't actually make it not true.
Oh, so he does know that we found other fossils of Australopithecus afarensis. Good, that means he's being willfully dumb at this point. That ain't no way to go through life there, buddy.
If you start counting the bones, you're going to get probably about 20%, which is still good compared to just pieces of a bone. I mean, bone fragments, like next to nothing. Why the exaggeration? This is an important point. With Lucy, why do you have to exaggerate? Hey, this is still really good compared to these other things. Satan is a braggart.
Satan is a braggart. Are you fucking serious? Carl is saying that his malformed understanding of the completeness of Lucy's fossil is because Satan is doing it?
Wait, we can swear on this channel? Shit, fuck, bollocks! And that made way more sense than what Carl just did. Demonstrate that Satan is a real thing, Carl, before suggesting it puts incomplete things in the ground for scientists to discover and creationists to misinterpret.
Now, one more point I want to give you, though. This is kind of interesting. One of the bones that they did find actually turned out to belong to a baboon. So they actually lost one of the bones. It just took a few years of study to figure out that
finding a skittle amongst some M&Ms doesn't suddenly mean that the M&Ms aren't M&Ms anymore.
I don't understand why this is a gotcha. It makes sense that other similar fossils could be mixed up with Lucy's fossil. Oh, they're still trying to push this idea that Satan is deceiving us. Right. Good luck with that.
Not only was she a he, but one of the bones they found belonged to a baboon and just kind of got mixed in. Interesting quote. If the fragment really does prove to belong to a baboon, he says, we can cut Don Johansson and his colleagues some slack. Okay, cut them some slack. But it still doesn't prove that this thing is a human ancestor.
Well, the thing that proves that Lucy is a human ancestor is the morphological similarities between Lucy and other apes. Considering that we are still apes, if Lucy shares some morphological similarities with other apes, that would entail her being an ancestor. It's really simple.
Plus, don't forget where the Lucy fossil sits in geological history. Australopithecus afarensis appears in the fossil record about 1.5 million years before Homo habilis shows up. All the evidence, including what GE just said, points to Australopithecus either being a direct ancestor or having a common ancestor with humans.
You know, I just find this interesting. Look at the skull pieces that they have there. You count them out. You know, you've got just a few skull pieces. I want you to see the reconstruction from those pieces. This is what the reconstruction looked like. Now let's listen to one of the guys that worked on these fossils to see what he says about the skull of Lucy's species.
As we assemble larger pieces from smaller pieces, joining them together, we begin to get a fairly impressive picture of a species that has a very ape-like face with big protruding brow ridges. Very ape-like.
I'm failing to see Carl's point here. So what? Yes, we can see pieces of a skull. Yes, we can then get a rough idea of what the owner of these bones would have looked like.
I don't think that this guy understands how much you can determine from bone. They know that Lucy was a full-grown female by her molars, and they know how tall she was by measuring her femur. Carl is just playing off his audience's ignorance of how these reconstructions are done. In fact, Carl is requiring you to be ignorant of this in order for his argument to even make sense.
It's exactly that. Ignorance is everything. But it shouldn't be.
So according to the individual that worked on the reconstruction of the skull of Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis, just means southern ape, it was very ape-like, big protruding eyebrow ridges. I want you to see the reconstruction. When you go to the Smithsonian, you see this reconstruction, and look, those eyebrow ridges aren't that big. I mean, it looks human. Where did the human features come from? From the skull that is very ape-like? No.
So basically, Carl doesn't understand the fact that we are still apes. Ape-like is how you would classify us, considering that we're still in the great ape family. Also, what makes Carl an expert in reconstructing an individual from their fossilized bones? How does he know that the Lucy reconstruction doesn't match the fossils that we have? It just makes it look like Carl is saying that the reconstruction doesn't look right to him, which essentially means nothing.
And if it doesn't look right to him, we should maybe take it all on board since he's a doctor of paleoanthropology. Oh, wait, no, he's not. So I agree, it means nothing. What a waste of a TED Talk, Carl. Next week, maybe you should consider a talk on how you don't understand how trees got here. I'd love a look at all the trees, it must be God talk.
From the individual that made the reconstruction, take a listen to what he said. I wanted to get a human soul into this ape-like face to indicate something about where he was headed. Excuse me. The evidence was a very ape-like skull, and you know he's headed somewhere. To get a banana is about the only thing that you know he's headed to do. You put the human features in there.
Tell me you don't understand anything about apes, their behaviour, what they eat, and where they came from without telling me you don't understand blah blah blah. I'm not entirely sure how pointing out a self-lack of understanding of any of this is even remotely a debunking of Lucy's skeleton, or evolution.
Lucy probably ate nuts, berries, fruits, and possibly meat on occasion. I don't know why he has to play the whole monkeys only eat bananas trope. Oh yeah, he's a myopic apologist that thinks the devil is just confusing everybody. Honestly, I wasn't convinced by anything in this portion of his video, and I don't think that anybody else should be convinced either. His entire argument just simply boiled down to, the devil hid the bones in order to confuse you into thinking the evolution is real. When we have empirical evidence that we are definitely connected to the other great apes, you can't just simply pass it off as Satan deceiving people. But that seems to be the crux of his argument.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Thanks for having me, GE. I enjoyed not witnessing any debunking whatsoever. I'm going to go and look at the Grand Canyon and see if it only took a week for it to become like that.
Woo, thank you so much, The Skeptic, for coming on and helping me take care of Carl in this portion of his longer seminar video. I really appreciate it. If any of you heathens out there haven't checked out The Skeptic's channel, I appeared with him in a collaboration on an earlier part of this very same seminar. So if you want to get the full story, go on over to The Skeptic's channel now and check out that video. But before you go on over to The Skeptic's channel, why don't you go down below and let me know what you thought about Carl's points in this video. Do you think that he had some solid ones that really deconstructed the Lucy fossil? Or do you think that he was kind of full of shit and he just thinks that Satan's deceiving all of us? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.